All right. Actually went pretty well, other than the fact that I forgot that the last part went 8 times instead of 6 times, right? That's a great tune, man. That's a whole lot of fun to play. And I'm going to kind of break the riffs down on that particular tune because we're going to talk about theory. Again, that's why we're here, is try to kind of understand what's going on. First of all, everything is pentatonic. And this is still based off of pentatonic, right? It's F-sharp pentatonic or minor pentatonic. If we look at the main notes that are in F-sharp pentatonic, they're F-sharp, A, B, C-sharp, and E. So when we think about the pentatonic scale, we have... Now we add in the flat 5, which would be C, right? And so we have... And they're actually going to borrow a note from F-sharp Phrygian as well, which would be G. You know, I mean, if you really want to look at the scale, I guess it would be like... Which is kind of a hybrid, you know, it's kind of putting a couple of scales together. But that's kind of, you know, what music is about. You don't pick one scale and just kind of stay with that through the whole song. You can. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, you got to kind of think of it, that's kind of like, you know, when you're going to paint or you're going to color, that's like taking 7 colors out of the box and only using those 7 colors for all of your pictures. Sometimes it's cooler to mix tons of colors together, right? So let's talk a little bit about those riffs. Let's listen to the first riff. I'll play the first riff. First one goes like this. It basically uses just the F sharp, right? Then we're going to use the Phrygian note, I guess, or the flat 2, right? We're going to go to G. And go back to the E, which would be the minor 7. So again, we're kind of looking at this as mostly pentatonic with, again, that G, or the flatted 2. Then we're going to hit that flat 5, back with C, back to the F sharp. Right? And that definitely gives us that kind of dark sound, right? The flat 5, the flat 2, that's definitely metal, right? Really metal. So if you think about that chord here, the F sharp, then I go to G. Really gives that kind of metal sound. And then when I go to that C, man, just those 3 chords alone, you can get some really cool. Definitely gives you that cool metal style sound. And there's really not a lot of riffs to this particular song, but that's the first one, right? Then we actually get into the verse riff of that particular tune. And the verse riff is just F sharp and E. Just a really cool rhythm using just those 2 chords. It goes... And really, again, we think about rhythmically on that particular tune, or that particular riff, I should say. It's just a straight... They're just going to put a rest in that. Just to create that riff. And that is it. That is the second riff of the whole tune. Then we get into the kind of the pre-chorus. The pre-chorus goes like this. That's how it goes. First one, mixing the chorus in with the pre-chorus. So one more time on the pre-chorus. And really, that's all pentatonic minor, except for the C using the flat 5, right? So that we're going to be blues. So blues, pentatonic minor, basically the same concept there. And then again, it's kind of used as a passing tone, right? We'll talk a little bit about the passing tone a little bit after we go over the last riff here. The last riff, which is the chorus, is basically B to C to F sharp. So we go. That's the entire song. It's not that complicated of a tune as far as the parts go, but man, what a fantastic song. Flotsam and Jetsam is a fantastic band. If you have not listened to Flotsam and Jetsam, man, you are missing out. Definitely a thrash metal band from the kind of 80s. In fact, Jason Newsted, Metallica's second bass player, or third bass player, but second bass player that was on the recordings, the guy that had the unfortunate job of replacing one of the all-time greats, Cliff Burton. That was his original band, was Flotsam and Jetsam, and he left Flotsam and Jetsam to join Metallica. So again, Flotsam and Jetsam is a great band. They've got a lot of great stuff out there. You should definitely check them out. Talking about the solo real quick, the solo goes, which is straight up F sharp minor pentatonic. That's just those notes right in there. Then kind of the little cool bluesy. Then two bends, and then they're going to borrow from F sharp minor. Right? And that's, again, we have like all these kind of movable modes that are in there, right? We have F sharp minor pentatonic, we have the flat 5 from the F sharp blues, we have the we have the G, the C would be the flat 5, we have the G, from F sharp Phrygian, and then we end up having the G sharp down here in the solo, borrowing from F sharp minor, or F sharp Aeolian, or natural minor, however you like to refer to it. But again, man, how cool is that? Simple riffs, definitely some tricky, fingering on maybe the first one there a little bit, and it is fast, but all good music should be fast, right? That's just the way it should be. Want to have that really cool rock and jam going on with it. But again, Flotsam and Jetsam, great tune. You should definitely check it out. Now, when we think about, riffs and patterns and things we're going to play, I'm going to come back and we'll do some more cover tunes later. Maybe not today, depending on what we get through and all the stuff we want to do. But let's go ahead and take a little chance there, and let's do it just a regular jam. Definitely kind of a cool warm up on that one. That idea of everything that I played there, kind of that same concept that we keep going back and forth from pentatonic, using with the major scale, and the blues scale, of course, as well, right? That chord change is essentially in one key, so that's kind of what I'm doing when I'm hanging with that one. I was just trying to stay within that particular key. Although I did use this idea, right, just to kind of use that D sharp or E flat along with the E and the G. E and G is part of A minor pentatonic. But in A's case, the E flat is flat 5. But that flat 5, man, that's really a cool sound. That's like what we talked about before. That's like the Metallica sound, right? The E to B flat, E to B flat. The other thing that I kind of want to talk about here a little bit, and that was something that I kind of failed to mention on the Flotsam tune, is that there's a lot of, I don't just play the notes when I'm playing. I actually use my instrument to kind of create noise, just to kind of give a dramatic effect, right? So, for example, if I'm going to bend a note, in this case I'll bend D up to E. A lot of times what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to scrape the strings as I go across. I'm going to palm mute, take this hand and kind of keep it across the strings, and I'm going to create this noise. But as I get to the last note, I'm going to let it ring, the one I want to bend. So I'm going to go. Again, if you did this on every single note, this would kind of get annoying, right? If I was like. But it has a really cool effect just to kind of give some, sound like you're really digging into the guitar and creating this neat sound. And the reason I bring that up is in the chorus, the Flotsam tune that we just played, the one that was B to C to F sharp, it goes. Take the delay off there. So in that section, we play the B to C, and then when I hit that F sharp, I'm doing this. I'm actually doing 2 mutes. I'm going. And it's just that mute sound. But again, it's those noises that we play rhythmically with the guitar, kind of using it percussive, almost like a rhythm instrument, like, I don't know. I would say drums, but drums, I'm trying to think of maybe a shaker or something that kind of has that kind of raspy sound. But my drummer friends will tell me what it is after they, after I mislabel what it is. So I won't say what it is because I don't know. I'm a guitar player. But the idea is all of those particular things, when you sit around and you think about playing the guitar, it doesn't have to be clean all the time. In fact, being super clean when you're playing sometimes just doesn't always come across as well as you could, Let's do another jam. one's a really cool one. I like those kind of slow jams that, it's not really slow. It's heavy, but it's kind of more crunchy and stuff. It's not so super fast where you got to kind of just shred over the whole thing. And again, we talked a little bit about that before. If you're writing tracks for yourself, you want to kind of make sure that, the drums themselves really play a large role in this. A good album to listen to, actually, to hear kind of the changes on the drums and how it affects lead guitar. And again, I'm just talking about lead guitar, but the drums in this album are fantastic too. Is one of Chris Poland's albums, Return to Metallopolis. Chris Poland was Megadeth's lead guitar player on their first two albums, Killing's My Business and Peace Sells. Fantastic musician. Chris Poland is probably one of my all-time favorite guitar players. I love this guy. In fact, Return to Metallopolis is one of the all-time classic metal albums. If you're familiar with Joe Satriani and stuff like Surf with the Alien, this is kind of like the speed metal version of that. But there's some tracks on there where the guitars are doing some really fast stuff, but the drums, played by his brother Mark, who is a fantastic drummer, he's kind of playing halftime stuff and a lot of hi-hat stuff instead of double kick. So it gives the jams this really cool, almost laid back feel, even though it's really, really heavy. And it's cool because the guitars themselves, the rhythm is playing really fast, kind of, it's kind of like doing this. But, and again, I don't remember the riff, I'm just thinking more of the rhythm. But the drums are playing this kind of halftime thing, and then Chris comes in playing, on top of that, this really slow kind of lead, and the whole thing actually kind of sounds relaxing and peaceful, even though it's this heavy shred thing. And so, just like a lot of cool concepts on that album, actually. Return to Metallopolis by Chris Poland. Definitely check it out. All right, let's talk a little bit about now. Let's talk about, using. We talked a little bit yesterday about having the notes, learning the notes on the guitar. And again, this is one of the things that's important to understand to be a musician, is knowing the notes that you're playing, right? Now, again, don't let that stop you. If you don't know the notes you're playing, you're still a musician. You're just not as knowledgeable as the rest of us. But again, let's point out real quick here that just because you're not knowledgeable doesn't mean that you can't play music that everybody loves and that everybody's going to pay for and want you to play in front of them. This has nothing to do with that. I have a big passion for music theory because I'm just kind of an analytical kind of person and I really like understanding what I'm doing. But that doesn't make me a better artist. That's just something I personally enjoy doing. Art is art, right? There's only one rule to art. There's one music fact, and we've talked about that before, but there is only one fact. Sounds good is good, right? If it sounds good to you or it sounds good to somebody else, it's good. If it sounds good to you and you don't know what you're doing, if you sounds good to somebody else and they don't know what you're doing and you still don't know what you're doing, none of this stuff matters, man. None of it matters. Obviously, as a professional musician, when you start getting into studios and you want to deal with musicians and bands and they're paying you for your time, okay, now it kind of matters because if you don't know what you're doing, you're costing those people money. And so that's one of those things too. Myself being a teacher, I've been teaching guitar for, 30 years? About 30 years. As a guitar teacher, I have to know all this stuff because you get students from all levels. You get the person that kind of comes in and has never played before, and they're like, hey, can you show me how to play Smoke on the Water and Sweet Child of Mine and all those other ideas? And you just show them, you can just show them the tabs, you can show them, because, again, you can learn to read notation. I can read notation. That's something you should learn to do as well. But again, those are all things that come in time. When you learn to play the guitar, you should probably gravitate to what you like the most. People ask me that all the time when I'm getting ready to, they're going to start lessons. They say, well, what should I start on? Should I start on an acoustic guitar or an electric guitar? It doesn't matter. What it really matters is what your favorite kind of music is, because that's what's going to make you practice. I think that at the lower end of the spectrum, when you're talking about spending a little bit of money for a guitar, I think the electric guitar probably is going to play a little better because it's just the way they are. You get a really inexpensive acoustic guitar and the action is really high. The action is basically how far off the strings are from the guitar neck, right? You don't want them really far so that you have to press down real hard to get it to go down, especially for your fingers if you're not used to doing this. They're kind of weak when you get started, and so you don't want to deal with that. So the electric guitar is nicer. But on the other hand, you get an electric guitar, you're going to have to get an amp, and you're going to have a cable, and it's not very portable. I mean, you can get a portable amp, but still you got to find a place to plug it in. And A lot of cars have places now, electrical outlets, or you can get kind of an adapter for even for the amp to plug right into your car. And some practice amps even run on batteries. But again, the acoustic guitar doesn't need any of that stuff. You can take the acoustic guitar with you, pull it out of the bag, and play. Again, either way, if you want to be loud to play with in front of a crowd or you want people to hear you, you're going to have some sort of sound reinforcement. With a guitar, electric guitar, you're going to have some sort of amp, maybe a loud amp or mic going to a PA, and then obviously with an acoustic guitar, you're going to have a mic going to a PA. Or if you have an acoustic guitar that has, pickups either in the bridge or some like my flamenco guitar has a microphone on the inside of it, plus the pickups on the bridge. And I'm not really sure that the pickup, the pickup or the microphone inside the bridge is designed to be the sole source of sound. I think that's more there to pick up the sound of your fingers as you go across and add kind of a blend to it. I'll have to get my flamenco guitar out. I don't use that one. I have a nice flamenco guitar, but it has some electronic problems. When I play it, it sometimes shorts out. So here, as we're using it here, I may have to balance out the sound. But we'll do that later. Like I said, we'll get that all set up and do that. So let's just take a jam here. Let's do another jam. Nice and mellow. get to that one in a second. That's a lot of fun too. That one we just listened to, another B minor D major track. Actually, I think it's mostly just D major. Definitely a cool jam to that. I want to try a few different tracks today. I want to kind of talk a little bit about Phrygian a little bit. I really like Phrygian. Phrygian's kind of that edgier seat. It's the third mode of the major scale, or the diatonic major scale. It's a really fun mode. In this case, it's kind of forcing the resolve around the third chord. So when we think about, like, in this case, B Phrygian would be G major. So we'd have B. So I'm going to play that B Phrygian. So I'm really going to kind of focus around that third chord. The ones that I like to use a lot with it to kind of, spell out the Phrygian sound is I'm going to definitely use the flat 2, in this case C. Definitely a cool sound. Let's take a listen to kind of a jam on that one. One of the things that we run into a lot of times is, and I don't want to say it's, Phrygian is a metal key, right? But it can be used actually very cool for like flamenco and stuff as well. So we don't run into a lot of Phrygian in like pop music. I kind of hesitated to say that, because I'm sure there are pop music that uses Phrygian at some point, right? But again, I don't listen to a whole lot of pop music that I've recognized it in or heard it before, right? So again, just one of those kind of jams. Let's take a listen to this Phrygian jam here. That one ends real fast. That one actually, I hope they didn't blow out the speakers there. It looked like it was redlining on my meter there. That was an old jam I used to have, and so it probably needs to be normalized a little bit more so it is not so heavy. I don't, it's crazy. I must have mixed, that was recorded on a 4-track cassette machine back in the day. Let's see a show of hands. Anybody that knows anything about cassettes? Yeah, man, cassettes were great. In fact, digital audio is great. It's really a lot of fun, but digital audio is a lost format. When you recorded music on a magnetic medium or on a record, you got much more of a full sound, right? You got a much more full sound. You really do. Yeah, they really were awesome, my brother. They just sounded better. I remember my buddy Scott Lyle, another fantastic musician, brilliant musician. He's actually the head of the music department now at Maryville University. In fact, I think he's a doctor now. So, Dr. Lyle, shout out to you, my friend. I remember when CDs came out. And Scott has perfect pitch. He could, he can hear stuff. And I remember when CDs first came out. He said, "Man, there is something wrong with this sound. It's like flat, or there's like parts of the note information missing." And that was what was so great about, cassettes, is that information wasn't there. It had this really nice, warm, full, fat sound, not that digital brittle sound. Now, again, if you don't know what you're missing, you don't know what you're missing, so it doesn't matter. Us old guys, we hear those cassettes, and, especially when you think about, like, albums, there was a lot of stuff with that. I remember, you always had to be careful with cassettes, obviously, because they were magnetic tape. You couldn't put them on top of like a speaker. If you had a speaker and you put it on top of that, you go to play the cassette later, there'd be like drops in the audio, or if it was really right on the speaker, it would be completely blank. So you just went out and spent $17 on your favorite album. You listened to it twice, you put it on top of your speaker, not thinking about it. Come back later to listen to it, and you now own a $17 blank tape. So there was definitely some problems with that. Same with, like, when you think of albums, you always had to buy the needle, and then the album it would get scratched, and so it would skip, or you'd have to put like a quarter or something on top of the arm, on top of the album, so it would weigh it down so it wouldn't bounce over those scratches. But, the audio quality that we got out of that stuff was definitely, in my opinion, superior to what all this digital stuff is. Now, there is a lot of conveniences to the digital stuff, don't get me wrong, and there's a lot of things that you can do with the digital. In fact, when I was teaching McMurray Music years and years ago, I had a guy that took lessons from me. I don't remember his name. I'll have to think about it and give him a shout out. But he worked as an audio engineer for recording audio for television commercials, or just commercials in general. And I think that when they first switched over to the digital format, they did not like the way it sounded. They didn't think it sounded warm enough. So they actually took tape noise. They recorded tape noise from the cassette tapes, just playing just that normal, I guess, kind of noise that was in it, and they would blend it back into the digital recordings, and they all felt that it at least added some sort of sound, made it sound a little more true to the way the old stuff sounds. Again, those are old things that'll die. There's a lot of audiophiles out there that definitely still keeping albums and cassettes going in 8 tracks and maybe even reel to reel. There was definitely some market out there. Now, as far as like new music being released on those formats, that's something I don't know. I know they're released on albums, but I don't know if they're released on cassettes anymore. Maybe a special printing or something like that. That was definitely something from the 80s, kind of an in-between medium. But man, cassettes were fantastic. All right, let's do another jam. Man, I can play over that one forever. I love just that plain bass track. Doing the same kind of concepts that we're doing. We're talking about the pitch axis again, kind of hammering that home. All of these things, why are all these things important is so that it frees you up as a lead guitar player. It frees you up as a musician to try to use all of these different techniques that you can kind of exploit to get all the sounds that you want. I use, and maybe some of these particular jams, man, I've used a lot of notes, and again, when I say a lot of notes, there's only 12 notes, right? But I've used, instead of just using the 5 pentatonic notes or the 7 diatonic notes, I'm kind of shifting around the fact that I'm hearing E. I played E major in there, I played E minor, I played E Phrygian. In fact, we could have even borrowed from other modes, which I didn't use tonight, which I think I did yesterday, was Phrygian Dominant, right? Phrygian Dominant, another great one. Phrygian Dominant, a mode of the harmonic minor scale. These are all, again, wonderful things. One of the things is, we start talking about all this terminology. Harmonic minor scale, Phrygian Dominant, diatonic major, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian. Really, if you know the notes on your fretboard, though, there's only 12 notes, and you kind of hover around the normal pentatonic, minor pentatonic arpeggios for the minor stuff. Now, again, when I say minor pentatonic arpeggio, again, that's kind of when I think of the minor pentatonic scale. It's an arpeggio. It's a minor 7 arpeggio with the 11 or the 4, however you want to look at it, actually in the scale. So a lot of the patterns that I play are based off of arpeggio shapes, and then I kind of add in the extra notes that I want. Now, again, when we think about arpeggios, I'm not specifically talking about sweep picking, right? When we think about like E minor, a lot of times people think, oh, arpeggio. I'm not talking about the sweep picking. What I'm talking about is actually just the 3 notes that make up an E minor chord, which would be E, G, and B. In this case, if I do it in the kind of the middle of the guitar here, and I see that pattern, and it kind of plays itself out in like 2 ways. I either kind of go back on it, so like here I'm playing 14 on the D string to get my E. I'm playing 12 on the G string to get the G, and then I'm playing 16 on the G string to get the B. Now I can get the B across on the 12 on the B. I can pick up the G on the, back up there, my mic's getting a little hot. I can pick up the G a little bit on the, the 17th fret on the D string. So again, when I think a little bit about, let me kind of kill my mic just a little bit. When I think about playing an idea, I think of that, and I think of that in octave. I use octaves constantly because, again, it's another way you can visually see how you work yourself across the guitar. And again, this idea here, if I play the E minor arpeggio, if I go, and I think about it an octave lower, and then I think about it again an octave lower. Right, so if I'll maybe come up with an idea that goes, and then I'll pick it up an octave higher, then another octave higher. Using octaves all the time. In fact, you could pick up little bits of scale patterns, like obviously if I was to play E minor like this, then play an octave higher. Now again, I'm only playing 6 of the 7 notes, but still. Definitely kind of almost gives it a more interesting sound. That's one of the things that, I like to play fast, so I like to have a lot of notes under my fingers. But from a melodic standpoint, sometimes melodic jumps sound very cool. Now again, when you're writing a vocal melody, I think you don't want to have jumps all over the place because that's kind of crazy. But as a lead guitar player, I don't have to worry about that. These aren't vocal melodies. Sometimes you do want it to sound like a vocal pattern, and I will stick kind of within that same octave and try not to really jump anything more than a third or a fourth as I'm playing, maybe a fifth. But again, those larger distances that we play, really go into effect. In fact, when you start playing and removing some of the intervals, you can get some pretty interesting sounds. For example, the kind of the diminished, like a diminished run. Like if I was going to go, or maybe something that has a little more of an Eastern sound to it. Kind of like this scale. I love this one. It has kind of really cool Orient sound. You know, it goes. And that's really, if you think about it, is like the first three notes of a minor scale. It's actually Dorian, if you really want to look at it. It's Dorian without the fourth of the seventh. So if I think of G Dorian, and I don't play the fourth or the seventh, it gives me just a really cool sound, right? It's just a lot of stuff that you can play around in those particular jams. Another good practice thing that you might want to think about doing too is, taking your scales and skipping notes around, right? You know, I kind of did that with like the pentatonic scale, where we kind of play in fours a little bit. Instead of just playing that standard, instead of going, nothing wrong with that. But maybe even doing kind of a larger interval jump, right? Anything to kind of break the sound up, to get you some new sounds, just something that you have something to do that's not always the same. And you'd be surprised once you get some of these different interval sounds in there, then you can actually do those same old things, and they sound fresh every time you kind of come back to them, right? Let's do another jam. was a good jam. That was definitely a cool jam. And listen back to that one, definitely had like kind of towards the end there, kind of maybe some notes that maybe I wasn't too happy with when I put in there. But again, that's the whole point, right? We're jamming, we're improvising. As you're a player, man, I'm a really, just stickler on going for it, right? Had some sour notes in there. Hey, man, that's okay. It's okay. I know they were bad, or not bad. They just weren't maybe the sound that I was particularly after, or maybe it didn't complement the little pattern that I was playing. But that's ultimately what we're after, is just pulling that the chord on the chute and hoping that it opens. But if you're a beginning player, look at somebody who plays at my level and go, hey man, that guy still makes mistakes. He still every once in a while, does maybe plays a note that he's not expecting, or because again, I can be really mechanical if I want to, but I don't want to. I just really enjoy kind of feeling the jam and playing it. And then if you're an advanced player, you already know what I'm talking about. Mistakes happen, It's all about the feel. It's all about that thing. I've seen plenty of live bands, professional bands that I've paid a lot of money to go see, make mistakes on stage. Doesn't bother me one bit, because again, they're human beings. They're gonna make mistakes. What is cool is that it's the energy. They're excited to be there. They're happy to be playing in front of us, and they're gonna give us that energy. Man, I don't care about the mistakes. If you're one of those kind of people that just is always wanting music to be perfect, you may be missing the point of live music. You maybe want to just stay with, just recorded music. Now, there are some bands that are just fantastic musicians that, very rarely make mistakes. But, Dream Theater would be one that would come to mind. But I'm pretty sure they make mistakes too. They may just not be as noticeable as other people when they make mistakes. It's just one of those things that you really want to try and, not worry as yourself when you're playing. Try to get that feeling across. Try to get the expression of what you're trying to do across, and really get that feeling down, right? All right, let's do another jam here. Give me just 1 second. I want to add a little more reverb to my my patch here. All right, so let's do that kind of Gary Moore one. that jam. That's another one of those jams that I can kind of play on forever. Actually, most of these jams I can play on forever. Who are we kidding? I'm a lead guitar player. I never want the solo to end, right? I'll be honest with you though. Sometimes it's hard to kind of keep coming up with new ideas and always trying to push that envelope. But if you don't play, you just kind of get in the habit of playing, the same 5 things that you know, the same 10 things you know, or whatever it is that you're doing. And so, that it's going to be kind of another concept that we're going to do on later streams is we're going to take some solos and actually kind of use them, right? In fact, I'm going to kind of demonstrate that here right now. If we think about the opening of Fade to Black by Metallica, right? I'm going to kind of use it over this jam again here. I don't know if everybody's familiar with that tune, but if you listen to the opening of that, the solo of Fade to Black kind of starts off and goes... But we just think about that line. Kind of starts off with a B minor arpeggio. And goes to A, right? So the whole thing's kind of based off of the jam that's kind of going over, which is the... Right? Kind of based off of B. So now this jam is in A. So that basically means that I'm going to take everything that was in B, right, and then I'm going to move it back 2 frets so that it's in A. Now, again, I can't just play that line. If I come on and actually solo and I go... Somebody somewhere is going to go, hey, man, isn't that Fade to Black? Yeah, I don't want that, because, Kirk Hammett wrote that. That's his solo. I don't want to steal exactly Kirk Hammett's line. I want to be inspired by what he played and the notes that he actually put into the line, right? So let's go back over this track again and just kind of listen to how I would maybe take that. Now, let's start off with playing it straight up, right? So even rhythmically it doesn't really fit, but if I think about those notes and I go... using that line that I learned from playing that Kirk Hammett lick, and then kind of borrowing it and making it my own thing. That's the key to when you learn to play guitar solos or you learn other people's music. That's the whole point. Other than having fun, right? The whole reason we play music is to have fun. That's what makes it so, I guess, not so difficult to get good at it because you're having a good time. If you're playing a musical instrument and you're not having a good time, you're probably never going to get good at it. You may want to figure out why that is. If you really love music, maybe that's not the right musical instrument for you, or maybe you're playing the wrong kind of music. This is something that I run into quite a bit with parents, and parents love their kids and they really only want the best for their kids, but they don't know music. Because if they did know music, they would teach their kids music and they would not bring them to me. The problem with that is they hear things from other parents, or they hear things from colleges, or your child needs to know this or he needs to know that. Well, all of the stuff that you need to know to be a good musician, you can learn later. What you don't want to do is you don't want to kill the enthusiasm before they even get started. Most of the time, all of these things are important. The theory is important. Understanding how to read sheet music is important. Knowing all of the chords and the scales and knowing all the notes in the fretboard, all of those things are important. But a lot of that stuff there's 2 things about those. Number 1, they aren't that much fun. And number 2, if you're a good player, learning that stuff doesn't take a lot of time. It's just something you kind of add in at the end. There's always going to be different methods, and everybody's going to want to do their own thing. But when you start off, man, just do what you like to do. Whatever sounds the most fun. If you just want to play Smoke in the Water over and over and over again, or you want to do, I would always teach really basic songs to my students that they can play just with some basic power chords. Rock You Like a Hurricane is a great one. Beverly Hills by Weezer is a great tune, just to kind of jam. Stuff that's just going to use one shape, move around the guitar, and make it sound like you're actually playing something. You'd be surprised, you play music and it actually sounds like something you hear on the radio. That really inspires you, and that really gets you going, and it gives you a lot of peace of mind, and it brings that enjoyment in. You really should enjoy playing the instrument. it is one of the most, I love the guitar, but there are so many other fantastic instruments out there that if you don't like the guitar, or you can't get a guitar, or you just want to do something else. Now, obviously, from a songwriter standpoint, you kind of like instruments that play chords. The guitar plays chords, the piano plays chords. Not knocking all the flute players or the saxophone players or the trumpet players out there, which those are fantastic instruments too. But those instruments are primarily single note instruments, and why that's a big deal when you're a songwriter is sometimes it's hard to get the color or the sound of the harmony that you want, right? Like C, C is a fantastic note. I love C. Who doesn't love C, right? But C by itself just is C, right? If I put C with like G and E, it has a certain quality as opposed if I put it with like an E flat, a C, G, and E flat, right? That first one's C major because it's C, G, and E. The second one would be C minor, C, G, and E flat. Those are two really radically different sounds, right? So one you're going to listen to is kind of happy, and the other one's going to be a little more somber. Both of them are equally cool. It's just the sound that you're particularly after, You play like a major 7, it gives it kind of a mellow feel to it, like, that's different than a major. Major's more bright. Major 7 has that major 7 in there. In fact, that's what's up when you think about the intervals. There's kind of an ugly interval in there, that major 7. Has that kind of darker interval. It's kind of even playing, but when I mix it with the other intervals, man, this is kind of a bright, beautiful, mellow sound, but not as bright as just the plain major without the major 7. When you think more along the lines of like maybe a flat 5 chord, now you're talking about tension, right? We get that tension going on. If you're writing music for scary movies, man, that flat 5 really comes in handy, right? And the flat 5, if you think of any old Black Sabbath fans out there, you think of like, Black Sabbath, the actual tune. Let me click off my jam here. So we have... That's the flat 5. The normal 5. That's again that kind of concept of understanding your theory so that you can get the sounds that you want. If you don't know the theory, doesn't matter. Just put notes together, right? You can only really play one note per string on the guitar, and it's kind of limited to how far you can stretch your fingers, right? So if you can think about maybe in this case, I'm going to play like E here on the 7th fret of my A string. If I use my first finger for that, I can't really get behind that very well, so the rest of my notes are going to kind of come forward. I can get this one. I can get the A sharp, B, C, C sharp, and D. Maybe D sharp, possibly another E to get the octave. But that's only because I'm on the 7th fret. If I was to do that here on the 2nd fret, my fingers really don't stretch far enough to get that particular tone. But again, you would use those particular sounds to build chords even if you don't know what you're doing. So if you're like, like that. All right, I like that. I like that. Oh, I like that. Or, oh, I like that, right? Now, again, maybe if you do like the darker sounds, nothing wrong with that either, right? You're maybe might be a metalhead in the waiting, right? Or just something that you want to kind of play around with. So let's do another jam. right, that was a nice blues jam. Again, mostly, again, pentatonic, diatonic. Playing C minor pentatonic and then E flat diatonic major, right? Let's talk just a little bit quickly about what I'm talking about there. Those terms, pentatonic and diatonic, right? All that means is just 5 and 7. They don't mean anything but more than that. Pentatonic just means a 5-note scale. Diatonic means 7-note scale, right? So again, we use all these big terms, and they're not really big terms. It's just, they're kind of the inside lingo or jargon that musicians use so that we know what we're talking about. But they're not meant to confuse anybody, although sometimes you think there would be. We get into kind of voicing chords and stuff, and we start getting into arguments of what chord is what the name of certain chords are, because some chords actually share the same notes, right? It has 2 different names, but I'm not going to get into that now. But again, there is some terminology that that you'll learn, but it's the same with the modes, right? We've got all 7 of the diatonic modes. We'll just stick with the diatonic modes for today. We think about Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. We can think about the step patterns that go to those scales, but they're all the major scale. They just start on a different note and go to that other note's the same note's octave, right? Those patterns are more chord changes, right? So when somebody tells me that they're going to play Mixolydian, all that means is they're playing the chords on the major scale, but the main chord is now the 5 chord, right? Because Mixolydian stands for 5. So in my brain, even though I know the modes and the half step patterns of the modes, really don't think of it too much that way. I think of it more like, Ionian means 1, Dorian means 2, Phrygian means 3, Lydian means 4, Mixolydian means 5, Aeolian means 6, and Locrian means 7. So when somebody tells me they're playing a Aeolian chord change, or E minor Aeolian, that means that whatever the chords are coming from, they're coming from obviously the G major scale, but the main chord and the resolve chord is going to be that 6th chord, the E minor, which then gives me kind of an idea of the target notes that I'm going to try to hit. And again, when we think about the target notes are just the notes that are in the main chord or the chord that's currently being played in the background, right? And that can actually change. You can actually hear the chords change. Kind of a case in point. Let's do a little jazz jam here. Now that I'm thinking about it, let me cue that up. All right. So what this one is actually this jam is kind of cool. It's going to go back and forth between G major 7 and G minor 7. So it'll go from G major 7 to G minor 7. Those 2 chords are not in the same key. And so talk about that real quick. People are like, if they're not in the same key, that means you can't play them together. No. That's not what key means. Key means that it doesn't mean you can't play them together. It just means that the group of notes that goes over this chord is not the same group of notes that go over this chord, right? So it's just a key change every single time we go back and forth between the chords. But let's take a listen to that and kind of listen to the, kind of the soloing idea that we're going to put on that. So there's the G major 7, G minor 7. Enough of the jazz ones. But that's, again, the perfect example of what I was doing there. I was basically shifting the key each time it changed, right? So over the G major 7, I played stuff from the G major scale. And then every time I changed to G minor 7, I played stuff from a G minor scale. Most of the time I was using G natural minor, although I think I did play a little Dorian in there. I don't remember it. I have to go back and listen to it. But again, every time I played major, major scale. Minor, minor scale. Right? And just kind of getting those sounds. That's where I was doing the Dorian, as I actually had the natural 6, the E, to kind of get the Dorian sound there. But again, just one of those cool concepts and jams, right? Let's jam another one. All right. a great jam. I really enjoyed playing over that one. That definitely that one. I think that one. No, that was my jam. I don't know. I don't know if I've played over as many boss jams tonight as I had been in the past. I've got a lot more of my own jams. I think I've been using this evening. But again, if you don't have your own jams, Google them. Right? YouTube is a great place for background tracks. Just bring up YouTube, Google into YouTube. Whatever you want to jam. So if you're gonna say like blues background or blues backtrack, and then you can pick the key. Right? If you only know how to play the scale on one key, or you're only familiar with where you start the scale. A lot of the pentatonic boxes that we know, if you know the kind of the standard minor pentatonic box, whatever that first note is the key that you're in as far as the minor key goes. If you're actually playing, well, if you only know one particular note, for example, if you only know, eventually you're gonna have to kind of know some of the notes that are on at least the top string, right? And there's some bonus to that too, because once you learn the notes on the top string, you know where they are on the bottom string, because these are actually the same string. Again, unless you're going to use like a dropped D tuning on the top, which we will get into later. I'll play some drop D songs, some of my favorite drop D songs, which I think of. "Room for One More" by Anthrax is definitely one of my favorite drop D songs. But there's all kinds of really great things. Drop D, "Fat Lip" by Sum 41. That's a fun one too. In fact, maybe we'll pull that one out here before we finish, just to kind of get another jam happening to do something different, right? But again, knowing the notes on the top string allows you to know what you're starting, so that's kind of important when you enter it into the YouTube information. So if you're starting like on the 5th fret and you know that note is A, you can say, hey, I need A minor backing tracks. Just type that into YouTube, and man, you get all kinds of cool backing tracks that you can sit there and jam over. If you don't have backing tracks, you can write and record your own if you've got the gear for that. That's always a great experience. But if you're not ready for that and you just want to play solos, having on the Boss E band is actually really cool too. I use the, which I've kind of shown before here. Let me kind of unhook it. This little guy here, the Boss BR80, or the Micro BR as they call it. This thing is a fantastic thing. It has a recording machine in it, kind of an 8-track recording machine. It's got its own drum machine in it. It allows you to actually record live audio. It's got some really nice microphones here on the front, maybe for bootlegging your favorite concerts. Now, I don't endorse bootlegging that stuff, but if you got to record your own band, if you want to record your band and share the song later with the rest of the guys in the band, I use it at band practice a lot. I would record something on this. Just if we're working out a tune and trying to get the song to sound right. Once we get the song actually worked out, I record it on this using the recording mode. It also has, like I said, the E-band mode in it, which has all of these really cool backing tracks that it comes loaded with. But it's even cooler than that because it's an MP3 player. You can actually load all your own MP3s on this baby and use it as a practice tool. And what's really cool about that is it allows you to slow the songs down and keep them in pitch. So when you're working on a difficult solo, or you're working on just trying to figure out what the notes to a particular riff are, this guy is going to do the whole thing for you. I can't recommend this as a practice tool more. This is my favorite all-time practice tool. It might be a little noisier. That's one of the reasons I don't actually run it live here when we're actually using this, because I notice some of the patches when I plug my guitar into it are a little noisier than I want them to be. But hey, that could be problems with my electricity here in the house. It could be 60-cycle hum. It could be the pickups in my guitar. It could be the lights that I'm actually using to broadcast, the fluorescent lights here that I'm using, to light my set here. And I'm not really sure exactly what it is. Maybe I'll work it out, but I do notice that it must be my guitar of some kind, because if I don't plug the guitar into the input, the sound output of it is crystal clear. So, like I said, but it's just a fantastic device. I really have no complaints on this guy at all. If you're looking for a great practice tool, like I said, this would be the number one thing to use. I used to use something that was called the Korg's Pandora's Box, made by Korg. Man, that thing was fantastic too. They don't make those anymore. Shame on you, Korg. You should really still be making those things. That was one of the most fun practice tools. It was just a really quick, dirty way to sequence up a couple of chords, then dial in a lead track or dial in a lead tone and solo over it, man. And it allowed you to record. It actually does basically a lot of the stuff this thing does a lot more than the Korg Pandora's Box did. But again, just as a live jam tool, man, Korg's box was just fantastic. I really enjoyed that box. But let's do another jam here. Maybe we'll do a little drop D. And let's bring up a cool track to maybe jam drop D with. Let's go with Sum 41. As I go through the plethora of stuff on my server. There we go. And let's go with, here we go. Let's give it a shot. All right. Man, that was a great one. Forgot the rhythm on the first chorus. But again, drop D, right? You know, what's great about drop D is it allows us to play power chords with one finger. You know, so we get that top string. Man, it obviously gets us two notes lower too. So lower is usually better when it comes to the world of heavy, right? Now, again, that can be debatable. I play in standard tuning most of the time in E, but because of my voice, if I have to sing, I detune all of my guitars down a whole step because it fits my vocal range much more comfortably. So again, but I don't like to play in those drop tunings unless I'm actually singing at that point. Only because I kind of like to associate the notes with the pitches, right? So when I'm playing the C on my guitar, if I'm detuned a whole step, the note that I'm actually playing is B flat, but I see it as a C. So I hear it as B flat, but see it as a C, and sometimes that confuses my mind a little bit, especially when I'm trying to, latch onto the sound of the pitches in my head. Um, that might be a little confusing. Now, again, it doesn't matter. You know, the last band I was in, we played an E flat all the time for the singer. Bands like Guns N' Roses always played an E flat. Van Halen, you know, for example, when David Lee Roth was in the band, they always played E flat because that was comfortable for Dave's range. And then when Sammy Hagar was in the band, they tuned back to E because he was comfortable in that range. So again, it's just kind of, you know, the singer is unfortunately he's born with what God gave him, right? So whatever he has, that's what he has. Guitars, we can switch back and forth, we can change, we can do all these particular things, and all of the patterns and the wonderful things that we're going to play. So that's again, you know, really what we're going to think about when it comes to the drop D. I don't want to go into it too much more farther than that. I don't want to do any more cover tunes here, only because I don't know if I remember any of them. So, but let me tune back up and we'll do another jam. Tell you, that's one thing that I wish my box Tone Lab had was a silent tune. When you hit that tuner, I wish it muted the output. But that it does not do. Which is, again, you know, something that all tuners should do. You want to mute that output, especially because it kind of makes it tough to tune on stage with that tuner. I got to use like kind of an outboard tuner to tune with, so it actually mutes the sound, right? Because you don't want to blast through the PA tuning your guitars, especially after every couple of songs. So that is definitely something. I have to look to maybe see if this actually allows it. That's kind of weird that doesn't have that on there, you know. But again, that's the way they made it, right? Still sounds fantastic. Let's do one more jam. great way to end off the evening, man. Really want to thank everybody for joining me tonight. It has been the Jam and Shred Dojo with Master Lee. I am Christopher Lee Weiss, a.k.a. Master Lee, here on Junkie Bass. And I hope you enjoyed hanging out, listening to the jams, and hope we learned a little something too. Go out, make your own music, share it with the world, man. That's what this is all about. Have a good time. Have a great night. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Peace.